Hi everyone, I'm Clara, and this is a video about my recent trip to Paris with my 8-year-old son and my dad. We have been really excited for this trip. We've been planning it for almost a year, and so we had a really wonderful time. One of the things I wanted to do, my son has been really interested when he's had the opportunity to learn about history in different parts of the world, different times, and I thought, hey, if we're going to Paris, this is like sort of a unique opportunity to have like thousands and thousands of years of like one through line of history visibly there around you. And so we made a history-focused visit to Paris. Probably the coolest part for me, and my son really liked it too, is I did a bit of a creative project and I made him a scavenger hunt in the Louvre as sort of a fun activity for him, but also a way to sort of incentivize him and have some structure to go from sort of era of history to era of history and to get to see all of these pieces in order. And so I'll take, I do kind of a long form YouTube video. And so I'll take kind of the first chunk of that and talk about that scavenger hunt. And then I'll take the next chunk and talk generally about the rest of the trip that we did, the different places we went, things that, like tips and tricks. I don't know. Things that we made mistakes on that, like, maybe if you're going to go to Paris, you don't want to make the same mistakes. I don't know. Cool. So yeah, we'll dive in. Okay. So I am going to try to make a PDF of this scavenger hunt and link it in the description of this video. So if you go to Paris with a kiddo, then you too can have this fun experience if you would like. It took us, the version that I had a longer version for him, and it took us 4 hours. So the one I'm linking is going to be a little bit shorter. But basically, I sort of made up this story about, a boy who had this experience when he was young where he meets this sort of like mysterious woman who tells his fortune at a traveling fair. And the fortune is that he's going to find a treasure. And so he becomes really interested in treasure and gold and money. And he starts to learn about times throughout history that like riches have been used to fund art. And so he becomes an art historian. So he's like driven in his life to, try to realize this fortune that he's been told. And so he becomes an art historian and he becomes really fascinated with that. And then he ends up becoming so obsessed that he moves into the Louvre, and then he spends years and decades in the back rooms of the Louvre trying to figure out sort of the answer to this mystery and where this treasure is going to be found. And so that's the premise. And then you're the one he's chosen to help him, and he's going to give you clues to help solve the mystery. So that was sort of we had been to an escape room a couple weeks ago, and so this is like Escape the Louvre. So that was fun. He really liked that. And when I got to the part where I was like, and you're the chosen one, he was like, I'm the chosen one. Like he was very excited about that. And so, yeah, so then the first item, so they have some like ancient civilizations, pieces from ancient civilizations that are in kind of the lower level of the Louvre. And I tried to do it in an order so that we would be walking in a cohesive direction throughout, so you're not going around, all over the place. But we started in the lower level of the Louvre, and the first piece is a statue from ancient Syria. It's from 2,500 years BC, and so that's like 5,000 years ago. And what's cool is this statue is like on the signs to the wing, so we kind of let him find it, and it was pretty near the escalators. And so, it took a little bit of time. The Louvre is huge. It is packed with people, and it's like insane because even when you're looking at the map, you have like what looks on the map like rooms, but actually each of those is like 17 different rooms where there's like stairs between them and stuff like that. So that statue, he was able to find, and it's pretty incredible. It's really well preserved, and it's cute, and it's like this big, and so he was really excited to find it. So that was the first item. It's also like surrounded by these like recovered pieces. So they have things like arrowheads and pottery, and they have like a represented they've like made a model of the architectural or the archaeological site where these items were discovered. And so it was a really cool, enriching way for him to be able to sort of see that. I also think it's like important to mention, like, how did people in Paris end up with these items? And it's like, oh, they were purchased in 1800. Like, really? Like, so anyway, that's something that we wanted to make sure he understood too, and mentioned that. So that was kind of the first one. In that direction and area are also like the ancient Egypt stuff, and there's, Palace of Susa and stuff like that. We had originally included those in the scavenger hunt, but they are really hard to find. It took like an additional probably hour and a half to just go through and find those items because they're deep in that wing. I think it would be like, in retrospect, it would have been better to just let him kind of explore and look around. There is a Sphinx though, which is pretty cool. I think that one, if you're feeling adventurous, is the one I'd say is worth looking for. All right. So next in history, we went to ancient Greece. And my son has been listening to the podcast Greeking Out, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. It is a National Geographic's kids podcast where they basically have one episode on each of the Greek myths. And the way they do it is like very true to the source material, but also like framed in a way that's like appropriate for kids. And so it was really exciting for him to do ancient Greece next. So we chose the Venus de Milo as the piece for ancient Greece. And again, like it's near-ish to the ancient civilizations area. And we kind of talked about like, hey, like as we were walking through, like you can kind of see every 500 years, like the sculptures get a little more realistic. That was kind of cool for him to see that through line. So the Venus de Milo is really beautiful. It's really big. They have it like up on a pedestal, and it's surrounded with other sculptures from ancient Greece. And so, yeah, he was excited to find that one, and it was cool for him to sort of see the progression over time of those skills evolving. Then right next to it is a huge room full of ancient Roman sculptures. And so getting to talk about like, okay, ancient Greece kind of starts a couple hundred years BC, and then ancient Rome is then like kind of year zero through a couple hundred years after BC. And here right there, like side by side, you can see like how much more sophisticated the sculptures are in ancient Rome. So I thought it was cool for him to like see that and be there with those pieces and sort of visualize that. And like, spoiler alert, this is like foreshadowing for the Renaissance. And so this is like all planned. And so for each of these, I actually held the pages. So he only got one page at a time. And when he like found one, you can see there's a little line where he writes in the year. And I thought that was important for him to just like cognitively get like, wow, then it was 2,000 years later. And like, then it was 500 years later. So that's why the year is there. And then when he finds it, then it's like, he was really excited. And then he gets to unlock the next page. And what I did, which was fun, is like when I was like, okay, you ready for the next page? I would like listen. I'd be like, oh, I think I can hear the art historian, and he's sending me the next clue. And then I just made up like a little riddle for him. And then when he solved it, I gave him the page. And so that just made it really fun. I mean, they were like really simple riddles. I don't know. You can have fun with it. Maybe I'll put in some suggestions in the PDF. Cool. So yeah, then was ancient Rome. So for ancient Rome, we did a statue, which was Artemis and the stag. Oh my God, I hope I got that right. Look in the PDF. I hope I got that right. But it's kind of like right in the center of the room. And so it's like, you can't miss it. It's also really kind of strikingly beautiful. And so it's sort of interesting how it's a lot of the same characters from those myths. But you can see that the skill is like much more evolved. There's much smoother surfaces. It's much more realistic. You can see like the muscles under the skin, like that kind of stuff. And in that room, there's a bunch of just incredibly beautiful pieces, and including like the I think it's called the Dying Slaves, are sort of like really famous Michelangelo pieces. And if you want, you can talk about how you can see the parts of the stone that had not yet been carved, and then the parts of the stone that had been carved. And so you can talk about that kind of process of creating them. But yeah, it was really beautiful, really, really lovely room. So after ancient Rome, we went to the medieval Louvre, which is like 500 years later. 700 years later, it's like the year 1200. And so here we kind of talked about the Middle Ages and how, and this is kind of important, but, there had been this progression of like an increase in skill. But then after the Roman Empire, it's kind of like people didn't value that quite as much. And so, we talked about, like the smaller kingdoms and the farmers and religion and stuff like that, and how that was sort of more the focus of the lifestyle. And there were a lot of wars happening at that time, and it was less so focus on kind of that art and evolving the sophistication of the skill. And so what was cool is they actually have the original. So the Louvre originally was a castle that was there, and they have the like old walls of the castle there inside the museum. And it's kind of incredible because you walk into this room and you're like, oh my God, there's like the bottom of a castle like here in this room. And they have this beautiful wooden walkway that you can walk through and sort of walk around it, the structure that's there. And they have pictures of kind of, like the classic European medieval castle that has like the turrets and the, all that stuff. And so obviously the top of it isn't there, but they have pictures of that, and it's sort of like the Disney castle look. And so it was fun for him to, I think, connect the dots to that. When you think of knights and princesses and stuff like that, then that's kind of this era. The other thing I really wanted to show was how the art then, they developed painting, right? But the art then, it was less of a focus on it being realistic. They don't have art there. The art from that time period is up on an upper floor, and it's actually near a later scavenger hunt item. And so I actually just showed him some pictures on my phone of, like you'll have these paintings of people holding babies, and the babies have like little tiny heads because they didn't just look at a baby, they just looked at a grown-up and then painted a smaller version of grown-up. And so I just showed him those pictures, but then later, like there's this incredible moment where they have side by side, like, actually, I'm not gonna say it now. I'll tell you when I get there. I'm like very excited about this, but I'll tell you when I get there. It's a Giotto side by side with like a pre-Renaissance painting of almost the same thing, but I'll get to that a little later. Okay, so we did the medieval Louvre. We talked about the Middle Ages, and then comes the Renaissance, which is like, hey, 300 years later, or like hundreds of years later, people start to think, hey, what were all those people doing back in like ancient Rome, right? Renaissance means like rebirth. So they're looking back and saying, hey, maybe we can kind of do this again. And so that's where you start to see these now paintings looking much more realistic. And so the piece there was the Mona Lisa. And so my son at age 8 had heard of the Mona Lisa, and it was like one of the things he was most excited about going to see on our trip. And so he was like really thrilled when he got the page for the Mona Lisa. And so we were able to kind of walk through. The way to get to the Mona Lisa, you're just surrounded with these incredible paintings. Like any single one of them, if there was like a traveling exhibit of it, like people would be lining up to see it. So, and then the thing to know about the Mona Lisa is that it is in a giant room packed with people, like absolutely packed. And you just have to like wait your turn and shuffle your way through this like mob of people until you get to the front. And then you can actually see the painting. It's pretty small. It's like this, twice as big as what my hands are showing now. And yeah, and you can see it. I took a picture of him with it. He was really excited to show his friends. But yeah, you can see, and I kind of talked to him about like, imagine if you were a kid and you were, a farmer, and you had never maybe even seen a painting before, or maybe you had, but it was like one of the paintings that we kind of had seen, I had shown it on my phone. And then you saw this, and it actually looked like a real, like a representation of a real person. Like, how would you feel? And I kind of wanted to help him understand that, like, that's why the Mona Lisa is famous. It's an incredible painting, but it's not necessarily the best painting that's ever been painted. It's that for that moment in time, what it represents is sort of an incredible, an incredible moment in art history. And so, so it was really exciting. He was excited to find it. And then you walk out of there, and then you get to look at the paintings again, but through a new light, which is like, oh, they had to go from there to there. Like, they had to get from the more like, Middle Ages kind of regression, and then kind of rediscover what the Romans had known. And then they kind of like got really into it. And then there were all these, painters, and, they were evolving even beyond what the Mona Lisa was able to represent with shading and musculature and, realism and stuff. And, able to sort of go farther and farther to create this. So yeah, it was really fun. And then next we say, and then they went crazy. That's what I said to him, and he was really excited, which is like, then the French royalty and like the sort of upper class at the time, they went totally crazy with like beauty and paintings and like all this stuff and riches. And so next we went to the Crown Jewels, which is this totally crazy room. It's like on the order of like Versailles, the Hall of Mirrors, with like paintings on the ceiling and gold everywhere. And then you see the crown jewels. And so this was the next clue in the scavenger hunt. You see the crown jewels, and they're just like totally embellished, like covered in jewels and all this stuff. It's a tiara, it's a crown, And so he was very excited to see that. And it really helped kind of paint the evolution of how they thought about kind of more and more and more beautiful art. And so then it was on that backdrop that then we're like, and then they had a revolution, because the people who were living there, they weren't being supported by their royalty, but instead they were just funding it, and they didn't have very good lives, and so they had a revolt. And so then the last piece was the Liberty Leading the People, which is a very famous French painting that sort of represents that time in history. He had been really excited about United States history and the Revolution, and had really enjoyed like Hamilton. So if your kiddo likes Hamilton, then like this was a really fun piece for him to see, because it was only a couple years after the American Revolution. And like that piece is on their money. And then, I'll just mention a couple other things. So between the Crown Jewels and Liberty Leading the People, you can go to an area that does have that Giotto, which is, it's kind of amazing. They have two pictures side by side around the same time in history. And one of them is Giotto, who's considered kind of like one of the very first people in, like, I think it was the 1300s, who was starting to paint in a more realistic way, which is sort of seen as like the birth of the Renaissance. And then the other painting is from around the same time, but it shows that style from before the Renaissance. And they're of almost the same thing. It's like Jesus on the cross, but you can see them side by side and kind of visually see the difference. And I think it really helped my son really get like what was changing about the art at that time. So that's what I had mentioned earlier. So here it is. And so you can kind of navigate that however you want, but I do think it's cool to like help connect the dots on the start of the Renaissance. The other thing I want to mention is we did one more picture after, which I might include in the scavenger hunt as like optional if you feel like you want to spend a lot of time, which was after the revolution. The monarchy had toppled in France, and so a lot of neighboring countries saw France as weak, and they came in and they attacked. But there was an army still in France, and they fought kind of like all these wars, and it was sort of from that backdrop that Napoleon rose to power. I always thought this was really interesting, because I always just thought like, oh yeah, just like in the United States, they had a revolution and then they set up a democracy. And like, that's not what happened. Like Napoleon was an emperor like in between. And so there's a piece which is like where Napoleon is being crowned, but he like takes the crown and crowns himself, which is like this huge picture. And so I'll include that as optional. I thought that was kind of interesting. history for him to know about, but it's kind of up to you on whether you want to just stop at Liberty leading the people. So anyway, the end of the scavenger hunt is that, listen to the art historian on the walls. And it basically, what I shared with my son was like, you found it, and this is the painting, and if we open it together, then there's going to be like gold behind the painting. And it's not just any gold, it is Medici gold. And so we got to talk about the de Medicis and how they helped to fund like a lot of the artists during the Renaissance. And then we also talked about like how, hey, a lot of times there's big sort of like flourishes of incredible art when there's people who are funding art, right? And so we kind of talked about that value of like funding art and buying art and like how important that is. And so he like got the gold. We like opened the painting together and we got the gold, and then like we helped it, I don't know how you want to do this, but we kind of like spun around and like helped the gold get returned to the Medicis and the Louvre to help continue to fund, like more art, and then gave some to the art historian. And then what I told my son is, now you get a little bit. And what that means is we are going to go to the gift shop and you get to pick something of reasonable price. And what I was really excited about is when we went to the gift shop, he wanted to buy a poster of the Mona Lisa for his room. So I thought that was a really lovely experience. So yeah, that was my very nerdy, very fun creative project that I did for my son. He loved it. He thought it was so much fun, and I put a lot of thought into it. I worked on it for at least like, I don't know, a couple weeks or a month to kind of think about it. And for me, as I was putting it together, it was really fun to kind of like look up these different pieces and like learn more about, this particular through line of history. And so it was a lot of fun to do. And so, yeah, I am including, I don't know, I haven't made it yet for you guys, but I will. And what I plan is for you to be able to find a PDF link or maybe a link to a Google Doc in the description of this video. And it should be easy to print. And it should have like the story woven in and each of the different pieces with pictures of them and kind of the line to put in the year. And if I have time, I will put in the little riddles because my son really enjoyed doing that. And if you do use it, I would love to know because if I don't know, then I have no idea if anyone ever used it. So feel free to just let me know, if you did. And if you don't, that's fine. But, I'd love to hear. So, yeah, hopefully that's fun. I'm going to transition now to talking about the rest of our trip. But that was Escape the Louvre. That was our scavenger hunt through the Louvre. All right. So I think to start, I'm just going to talk about travel for a second, and then I'll actually go into the itinerary because we did a lot of research and I think it turned out really good. So I would recommend finding a nonstop flight because it's really long. We're on the West Coast, and so it's like 10 hours-ish. And I have done layovers before on long trips, and it becomes end to end, like instead of 10 hours, it's like 16 hours, and it becomes like extremely exhausting. So I would suggest a nonstop trip. We packed one carry-on. I mean, we had our backpacks too for the flight with screens and chargers and, a magazine and stuff like that. But we packed one carry-on and we were there for 5 nights. So you can do it for 2 people. You got this. And so it was 5 changes of clothes, a set of jammies. I wore sneakers and I packed a nice pair of shoes, a nicer pair of shoes to wear. And we each wore a jacket and our toiletries. That was it. So I highly suggest. Obviously, don't forget your passport. Global entry is nice when you're coming back into the U.S. if you're able to get it. And bring a couple of power adapters because this kind of a plug won't be able to plug into a wall in France. So you can just, buy online a couple of power adapters, and that's going to be good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. those are my tips for now. So yeah, we flew into Charles de Gaulle Airport. You can then basically, I mean, I suggest like trying to sleep on the plane. Like if you can get a nice solid like 4 to 5 hours of just resting, even if you're not fully sleeping, you should be set up okay. We got into Charles de Gaulle. You don't have to wait for your bags if you pack to carry on, which is nice. And then you basically go through passport control. They have a separate line for families, which was really nice. So when they saw that we were there with my son, they said we could go to the separate line. And so that was a much shorter line, which was great. And then you basically come out and then you want to just go downstairs and then you can go through to a train station that's there. And the train there is called the RER. You can also just go to Google Maps and click on the like public transportation button, or I think there's like a train button and it'll tell you like what line to take. So you can take the RER directly to Paris. We stayed at a hotel, which we liked a lot. It's called the Hotel Observatoire, and it's right next to the Luxembourg Gardens. And so that's the French Senate, and there are these just like really incredible gardens that are great for like if you like to run, like I do. Like you can go for a run through the gardens in the morning. A lot of Parisians do that as well. And the nice thing is you just basically like get out at the stop at the end of the train line and you walk up the stairs to the sidewalk and like there's the hotel. So that was kind of nice to be able to get in that way. So yeah, that's kind of how we arrived. We checked in. The people at the hotel were super nice. It's like a nice hotel with a good breakfast, really nice people. The rooms are a little small, but it's a really great location. So I recommend it. Not like a super fancy or luxurious hotel, but I really enjoyed our stay there and I would do it again. All right, so that day, really the trick from a jet lag perspective is to try to stay up kind of as late as you can to be able to go to bed at like 9 o'clock if you can. If you get in and then you take a nap, then you may wake up and then just be up all night, and that's not going to set you up. Like it's going to not set you up for a good trip. And so what we did is we kind of like we like unpacked our stuff and settled into the hotel, and then we walked across the street to the Luxembourg Gardens, which are like really amazing. And what's cool about them is you have these beautiful gardens, but you also have these like statues of queens like around. So you basically like go down this walkway and there are all these like beautiful queens from like, every 50 years in history, there's like a different queen. And so they're in these beautiful dresses and they're these incredible sculptures. So that was really fun to do. And we saw, if you listen to my piece just now in the Louvre, we saw a statue of Mary de' Medici. And so we kind of talked about how, the de' Medici's like, played a huge role in like helping to fund the art during the Renaissance. And so that was a really cool opportunity to see that. Then we got galette for dinner. A galette is a savory crepe where you can get like an egg and some ham and some cheese like in it, and then we sat in the gardens and ate that for dinner. So it was just a really lovely way to start the trip, and I would recommend it. All right, so then we went to bed, and then the next day we did the Louvre. So from our hotel, there's that metro stop right there, so you can take the metro right over to the Louvre. Or you can walk. And walking is really nice because you get to kind of look around and see. Like there's all these really interesting things, and there's, stores, and you can get a crepe, and you can get, whatever. So we had breakfast at the hotel, and then we walked over the Louvre. It's pretty far, it's like a 45-minute walk. So, you can totally take the subway if you want. But it was nice to do that walk. I won't go too into depth into the Louvre again, but what I will say is if you want to buy an annual membership, which is not too much more expensive than an individual ticket, you can skip the whole line in. The line is massive. It basically, like, you come in and those like iconic glass pyramids, and there's like a massive set of stanchions and like a horde of people, and you can just like walk around that and go in the side of the Louvre, and you'll just say like, hey, I'm here to buy a membership, and they'll say, okay, go ahead, and you go through security and you go down the escalator, and then you go over to it's called Amis du Louvre, like Friends of the Louvre. You just go over to that area, and there's like no line, and you can buy your annual membership. So it's a little more expensive, but it's funding the museum and education art, and so we chose to do that. All right. After the Louvre, what did we do? I think we just went to a bistro for dinner. One funny thing about Paris is that a lot of the restaurants are not on Google Maps. It's a little bit strange. I think that maybe they have to pay to get on there. And so when I was doing the research in advance, I was like, I can't find any good restaurant. Like, there are all the good restaurants. But when we just were walking back to our hotel, and I think we went by way of Notre Dame. So we just like walked along the Seine and then like checked out Notre Dame from the outside. And then we walked back to our hotel. You kind of want to get out of the super touristy area. So like if you go to a restaurant right near Notre Dame and that area, a lot of the restaurants you can tell because their title of the restaurant will be in English, or they'll have like English words. Generally speaking, those are more like touristy restaurants. But as you sort of like get out of that area, you'll pass like all of these great restaurants. They have like outdoor seating, and you can look at they usually have the menus like up framed like outside of the entrance to the restaurant. And so, you know, if you want to get your classic like French onion soup and like croque monsieur and like all that stuff, that's what we did for dinner. And it's really lovely. You know, you sit outside, you watch the people going by, you eat delicious food, get a glass of wine. So that was really nice. So that was our Louvre day. The next day we wanted to do Notre Dame and then a Michelin star lunch and then go to the Eiffel Tower. We absolutely did not have time to do that. And so we had to bag the Eiffel Tower. So we did Notre Dame first. So we walked back there, and then you wait in a really long line, and then you get to walk through the inside of the cathedral. And you get to see these incredible, like, stained glass. They have like the rose stained glass windows, which are these huge round windows. And, after having done the Louvre tour, and we wanted to do that first so that he could have all of that context from history. So after doing the Louvre tour, then we were able to like point out like, hey, Notre Dame was built around the same time as the medieval Louvre. And so that's why in the art inside Notre Dame, unless it's the more recent art, it tends to have that more like medieval style. And you can also talk about the archways and how, in ancient Rome, you have archways that are shaped more like rounded, but then they started to evolve and figure out, hey, you can have these pointed tops. I think that's called the Gothic arches. And that's part of the architectural advancement that allowed them to build such a large building. Notre Dame is a very stunning cathedral. So that was a ton of fun. So my son really likes food. I do too. So does my dad. And so we did a ton of research to try to figure out what would be like kind of a fancy special meal that we could do. I got a hold of a Michelin guide to see like, hey, maybe we could do a Michelin star restaurant. I looked up a whole bunch, and the Michelin guide is organized by cuisine type and also like area of Paris. And so it was easy to sort of look through. We found like the tradition, they have a section on traditional, and then you can see how many stars they have. And then you can choose like it's called the arrondissement, which is like what number it corresponds to, like what neighborhood within Paris. So that was how we were able to sort of identify some options. When I looked each of them up online, they kind of all had the same style, which I honestly didn't love. They looked really fancy. And then the food, it would be like this giant plate with like a tiny little bit of food in the middle of the plate, like a little spoon of caviar and a little spoon of like green stuff or something, and then like some fancy sauce. And I was like, I don't know that that's what we want. So I looked up every single one, and I found one that looked like just what we wanted. And it's called Louis XIII. 13 means 13. So Louis the 13th was one of the French kings. And it's a Michelin star restaurant. It's kind of near Notre Dame. And it was awesome. It was just like your classic traditional French meal, sort of plate after plate after plate. They had an amuse-bouche, between each of the courses. They served my son apple juice in a like stemware glass, so he could feel like he had the experience of drinking wine. They were really nice, and they did speak English. We speak French, but they spoke English. So if you're thinking of going, I highly, highly recommend it. So, and they were super nice to my son being there. And he chose the pate to eat and the rabbit. And they looked at each other and they said, no, he's too young. We insisted, and he actually really liked it. And so they were very impressed, which was a fun highlight of the trip. Cool. So yeah, Louis XIII for lunch. It was great. And then yeah, we tried to go to the Eiffel Tower. It was a bust. Eiffel Tower is just again like hordes of people. And what I didn't realize at the time is you have to buy your tickets in advance online, and they tend to like sell out. And so if you just show up and you want to buy tickets, you have to sit in a line for like an hour. And even the line to the bathroom was like 25 minutes. And then you have to wait in line to go on the Eiffel Tower, which was another 10 minutes. And then you have to wait in line to even get through security to get into the area, which was like 25 minutes. So we tried to go, and we didn't end up being able to do that. But we canceled our plans for the next day and went to the Eiffel Tower as a full day activity, and that ended up being super fun. So I'll talk more about that in just a minute. The other thing we did on our second day, which was awesome, which is we found a water taxi to go up and down the Seine to go from Notre Dame over to, and it stops at the Louvre, and then it stops at the Eiffel Tower. And I did a little bit of research because there are some water taxis that are like really loud, and they have flashing lights, and they have like a audio tour happening, and it was like we didn't really want that. But the one we found is called Batobus, and it's just a little more functional. It comes every like 20 minutes to each of the stops, and so you can just walk to any stop, and you buy a day pass online. You can walk to any stop and wait until it shows up, and then you just get on the boat and go until you want to get off, and then you can get off. So it was really beautiful to get to be on a boat on the Seine, and I recommend Batobus. Okay, so the next day was the Eiffel Tower. Super long lines, but I would recommend buying your ticket online like well in advance, like a couple weeks in advance. But yeah, we just budgeted enough time to wait in really long lines for a really long time, and we did finally get to the point where we could go up the Eiffel Tower. So the way it works is that you can take an elevator up to the Eiffel Tower is shaped like this. It has the ground, then it has the first floor, then it has the second floor, and those two are like pretty wide. And then it goes all the way up to the top. And so you can take the stairs up to the first floor and then the second floor, or you can take an elevator up to the first floor and the second floor. And then there's an elevator that goes up to the very top. So I highly, highly, highly recommend taking the stairs. And the reason is it doesn't take that long. It is a ton of stairs, but from the ground floor to the first floor, it's like maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then from the first floor to the second floor. The reason I recommend it is the lines for the elevators are extremely long. Like it would take you way longer to wait in line than to just take the stairs. And that's same with coming down. You have to wait in line to take the elevator coming down, and it's just like a bunch of really tired looking people like waiting for the elevator. The other thing is like as an experience, getting to go up the stairs of the Eiffel Tower, then you're looking out across and you're seeing this landscape like unfold before you. And so it's more of a, I think, memorable experience if you take the stairs. So yeah, that's what we did. The other thing that I would note is that we found a restaurant on the first floor, which we decided to eat at because we were hungry. And so we ended up having lunch on the first floor, and it was actually awesome. Like the food was good. The people were nice. It wasn't like too expensive. And I would have thought that eating lunch on the Eiffel Tower would be like really expensive and not that great, but it was great. Like it was a surprise highlight of the trip that we hadn't planned. So yeah, that was great. And then we took the elevator to the top. The only thing I'll say, which I didn't realize, is like it's scary. Going on the Eiffel Tower is like really scary. You're really high up. It's a structure that is not, it's like a lot of open air. You don't have a lot of like just a ton of like ground beneath your feet. It's a lot of like like walking on stuff that, it doesn't have holes in it, but the structure itself, like often the way that it's structured is like, there's a lot of open air. And so like, it was kind of scary. My son was kind of scared. I tried not to let him know that I was kind of scared. Obviously it's totally safe. But they do something nice in the elevator, which is they have a countdown of the number of seconds that it's going to be until you get to the top, and same when you come back down. And so it's like 80-ish seconds. And so you can see that counting down. What I told my son was like, do you want to go to the top? If you don't want to go to the top because you're too scared, it's okay. And he said, well, I felt scared to go up to the first floor, but then I started to feel better and it was worth it. So I do want to go to the top even though I'm scared. And I told him, okay, we'll go to the top. And if you freak out, then I just want you to know that I'm here for you. And there's going to be a line to get down on the elevator. So if you're freaking out, just know you're going to have to wait a little while before we get back down. He said, okay. So we did it, and it was totally worth it. It was a total blast. And the cool thing, too, is you can look out and see all the places that we'd been. So it was fun for him to be like, oh, there's the Louvre, and oh, there's Notre Dame, and oh, there's that. Well, we were on the Eiffel Tower, so, there's the Seine. And, he was able to ask questions about other things he saw, and we took pictures of them and looked them up later. So, yeah, the Eiffel Tower was great. It was totally worth it. Just make sure to get your tickets in advance. All right, so this is really long. If you're still listening, great. Okay, so for dinner that night, we wanted to go to a creperie, and we found one called Creperie des Arts, which means creperie of the arts. And it's right next to Creperie of the Fishermen, I think is what, Creperie des Pêcheurs or something like that. And there are two little themed creperies where you can go in and get your menu and order your savory crepe for dinner. And then we just went through and had sweet crepe for dessert. It was totally great. But that was the third day. And then the fourth day we went to Versailles. So Versailles, here's the thing about Versailles. You can get there. So we took the train. We walked for a half an hour. We took a 12-minute train ride, and then we had to walk for another half an hour. So just keep in mind that there's a lot of walking just to get there. And there too, it's you have to wait in line to buy your ticket, and you have to wait in line to go through security. So just set your expectations. And I would say if there was one day that was kind of meh, I actually think it was the Versailles day, just because of how it just went a little beyond our patience to like get there and get back. The cool thing about Versailles is that it is in a little town. It's in like a smaller town, and so it gives you kind of that example of being outside of Paris and seeing like what that's like. The castle itself is amazing. So they have like incredible art. They have like the rooms of the castle where like the royalty would live. So that was really fun. And then when you go out the back, there's the gardens, and the gardens at Versailles are like huge. Like they just go on and on and on and on forever. And there are, you know, fountains and flowers and lawns and sculptures, and they have like beautiful music playing. And there's, you know, you can, you know, at one point there's like this big canal, and you can like rent a boat and like float around on the canal. So that was really special. That was really fun. Yeah, and then let's see. Yeah, I think that night we just ate at a bistro again. It's totally delicious. We found a really good one near Versailles. I forget what it's called, but basically like when you're walking out of Versailles, you walk through the parking lot, and then you bear right near the bottom of the parking lot, and there's this street of restaurants. And we were there on a Sunday, which means like a lot of things are closed, but most of the restaurants there were open, and we were able to just like walk along until we found something that looked good. So yeah, that was our last day. My son loved it. We flew back. You know, the flight back feels longer because you're not sleeping on the plane. But we made it. You know, we watched a bunch of movies. We made it through. It was just a really fun trip. It was really special. My son really loved it. I think it was like kind of nice to go with one kid, because then he was able to just like be the one in charge. Which was nice. We ate a ton of good food. The people were really nice. And yeah, I think he learned a lot about history. And as someone who has really, like, he loves history. Like, he has always loved learning about history. And so getting to see all of that, and especially we did the Louvre tour first, and then we were able to, like, reference back to it at all the other things that we saw on the trip. I think that was just really, really special for him. And yeah, he came back. I helped him do like a presentation to his, you know, I reached out to his teacher and asked, you know, he had said he wanted to bring some of the items that we got in to show his class. So I reached out to her to ask, and she said that would be great. So we put together photos and sent him in with his Mona Lisa, you know, poster and stuff. And he got to do that presentation. So yeah, it was great. It was really, really fun. It was really special. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Well, if you watch this and go to Paris, I hope you too have a wonderful time. If you use any of the ideas that we had, I hope that I didn't lead you astray. And if you do something new, I would love to hear what you recommend. Bye.